प्रथमं सद्गुरुं वन्दे श्रीकृष्णं तदनन्तरं गुरुः पापात्मना त्राता श्रीकृष्णस्त्वमलात्मना ध्यानमूलं गुरोर्मूर्तिः पूजामूलं गुरोर्पदम् मन्त्रमूलं गुरोर्वाक्यम् भक्तिमूलं गुरोर्कृपा वंशी विभूषितकरान्नवनीरदाभात् पीताम्बरादरुणबिम्बफलाधरोष्ठात् पूर्णेन्दुसुन्दरमुखा दरविन्दनेत्रात् कृष्णात् परं किमपि तत्त्वमहं न जाने। यो ब्रह्माणं विदधाति पूर्वं यो वै वेदांश्च प्रहिणोति तस्मै तग्वंह देवमात्मबुद्धिप्रकाशं मुमुक्षुर्वै शरणमहं प्रपद्ये। भजो गिरिधर गोविंद गोपाला 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 भजो गिरिधर गोविंद गोविंद गोपाला
भजो गिरिधर 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 गोविंद गोपाला।
श्रीमद् सद्गुरु सरकार की
जय।
श्रीमद् युगल सरकार की
जय।
Dear devotees of Shri Maharaj Ji and respected viewers, Radhe Radhe. पाप करते करते अंतःकरण इतना मलिन हो चुका है कि रसिकों द्वारा यह जानने पर भी कि तुम अपनी भुजाओं को पसारे अपनी वात्सल्यमयी दृष्टि से हमारी प्रतीक्षा कर रहे हो, तुम्हारी शरण में नहीं आ पाता। My heart has become so impious by material associations that even having learned from your loving saints that you are waiting for me with your open arms to embrace. And you are looking to me with your graceful eyes to grace. I have failed to surrender myself to you. This line talks about pap, sins, and transgressions. Our scriptures describe, they give us a definition of what a sin, or what sins are. Mannimittam kritam papam madharmaya cha kalpate मामनादृत्य धर्मोपि पापं स्यान्मत्प्रभावतः। जानी जानी पाप किए गोविंद राधे अति दुख पाए प्रभु अब तो क्षमा दे. A sin, the time that we spend in the loving remembrance and the loving thoughts of Hari and Guru, those moments are free of sins. The rest of the moment outside of the realm of our spiritual sadhana, when our mind is engaged in the loving thoughts of God and Guru, every thought, every action is considered a sin. Jani jani paap kiye Govind Radhe. I've committed intentionally, deliberately, negligently sins over the course of uncountable lifetimes, and I have experienced untold misery as a result of my own misdoings and wrongdoings. Please forgive me. So this line depicts the sentiments of an aspiring devotee's heart. O Patita Pavan, the divinizer of sinful souls. O Dina Bandhu, the true friend of humble souls. Daya Nidhi, the compassionate and the merciful. Oh, my Shri Krishna. I have committed sins after sins after sins. And I am relentless. I don't stop. I don't stop. And even though I know that you are looking upon me with your graceful eyes to grace, and you're waiting for me with your open arms to embrace, I have failed to surrender myself to you. पापों की जननी तो गोविंद राधे, माया है तेरी दासी मोही दोष का दे. माया का भी दोष नाही गोविंद राधे, माया जड़ तू जैसा घुमा दे. माया जड़ तू चाहे जैसा घुमा दे, तेरा भी दोष नाही गोविंद राधे. आया ना शरण तेरी तो ही दोष का दे. राधा गोविंद गीत. Once a devotee asked Shri Maharaj Ji, Maharaj Ji, आपका कल का कार्यक्रम क्या है? What is your program for tomorrow? So Maharaj Ji replied and said that I only have one program. My work never changes. There's only one thing I do. I do anything and everything it takes to propel souls toward God, toward Radha Krishna. So in these dohas, this is exactly what these dohas demonstrate Sri Maharaji's hard work, his tireless efforts to elevate us. So the first doha, the devotee is taunting, lovingly taunting Sri Krishna, that the evil or the root of all evil is Maya, and that Maya is your maidservant, so why am I being blamed? Just imagine. This is the sentiment that Sri Maharaji imbued within this doha. Why? To evoke those feelings of love and grace and that aspiration for Sri Krishna's grace. Not that Sri Krishna is guilty, no, but Sri Maharaji is inspiring us to do what? To remember him in this way. The second doha, Maya ka bhi dosh nahi. Maya jad, tu chahe jaisa ghuma de. But it is really not the fault of Maya either, because Maya without your power is inert. It is lifeless. So you being the inspirer, you can turn Maya toward me or away from me. It is all in your hands. And then the third doha, Tera bhi dosh nahi. It is not even your fault. Fault is really mine, that I did not take refuge in your lotus feet, O Sri Krishna. How beautiful, and how Sri Maharaji, through and through, in the Radha Govind Geet, in all of his compositions, this is exactly what he has demonstrated and illustrated to inspire us and to uplift us, so that whatever it takes, at least we should engage and absorb our mind in remembrance. We all are travelers on the path of devotion, and we aspire to build the castle of bhakti, of devotion. And just as a building stands on a base or a foundation, when a building, before it's constructed, the foundation is laid. And if the foundation is secure, then the building stands firmly on that foundation. So what is the foundation of bhakti? Sri Maharaji tells us it is Shraddha, faith. And what is this faith? What does it mean? So Sri Maharaji tells us, Guru Vedanta Vakyeshu Dridho Vishwasah Shraddha. Confidence, trust in the teachings of our Guru and also of the Vedas and the Vedic scriptures. Shraddha. And an example in our history is Valmiki. His heart was so fallen. We have heard the story of Valmiki. His heart was fallen because of all the sins and transgressions that he had committed, terrorizing and robbing people and hurting them and abusing them. And so finally, when he met his guru told him that the only atonement for your sins, the only way they can be redeemed, is through the remembrance of God, God's name. So he was told he could not chant Ram Ram, so he chanted Mara Mara. So he sat down, and without even the slightest doubt in his mind, He continued to follow the instructions, the agya of his guru. He never asked, why am I saying this? For how long will I continue to say this? And when will you return? No, he did not question at all. And he continued to chant Mara, Mara, Mara until he became God realized and revealed the Leelas of Bhagwan Ram even before Bhagwan Ram descended on earth in Treta Yuga. So this is Shraddha. So Shraddha, faith, is indispensable in the path of divine love realization. Someone may say, well, I don't have faith. What do I do? How can I develop faith? So the scriptures tell us that in order to develop faith, we must take refuge in knowledge, divine knowledge, under the guidance of His divine personality, knowledge. And that is why Goswami Tulsidas Ji says, Jane binu na hoya paratiti, binu paratiti hoya nahi priti. So Goswami Tulsidas Ji tells us that knowledge or understanding of the knowledge within the scriptures appears as faith. And according to the intensity of that faith, an aspiring soul desires or longs to meet God. And that longing is what is called love. If there is no love, it means there is no understanding. That's what it means. If there is no love, then there is no understanding. So, knowledge leads to acceptance, and acceptance leads to love. Sri Maharaji gives us examples to explain what this means. Suppose there is a servant in a house working, and he is approached by a beggar for food in exchange for paras money, touchstone. So the servant didn't know what that was. He had never seen it, but he knew it was something valuable. So he thought, all right, I will feed him, and I will give the touchstone to my boss, to my master, and he will be happy. And as a result, my job will be secure. So he set it on the table. When his master came home from work that evening, he noticed the stone and he asked, what is this? So he said, sir, well, a beggar left this behind. I fed him. So the master said, are you really so silly? Use your brain. If a beggar or anyone, for that matter, had a paras money, a touchstone, why would they come begging for food? So thinking that it was just an ordinary piece of stone, he threw it. It hit an iron latch, which turned to gold. He touched it to a second one and the third one, and they all turned to gold. Now the same man, same eye, same intellect, but he realized its true worth. The knowledge dawned in his consciousness, and from what was detachment, now it transferred. That knowledge, when it dawned, it transformed into attachment for the same object. So, knowledge, acceptance, and love. A girl is walking down a street, and a boy comes and places his hand on her shoulder. She shoots an angry look at him and reaches for her shoe. Just then, her friend says to her, well, wait, don't do this. Why? Well, your parents are going to have you be married to this boy. Oh, really? Now, the same girl is wanting to look at this boy and still glances. Look at him. She is eager to look at him. Now, what was wrong with the boy when he came and touched her, that she reached for her shoe to smack him? And what is so great about him now that she is wanting to look at him? Well, she accepted him as her own. She accepted him as her own. So wherever there's fulfillment of selfishness, there's love. That's why Goswami Tulsidas Ji again tells in the Ramayana, Jate kachu nij swarat hoi, ta par mamta kare sab koi. That it is the law of nature that the base of all attachments is fulfillment of self-interest. That's it. So, if we realize that our self-interest actually lies with Sri Krishna, then we wouldn't have to do anything. We wouldn't have to practice devotion. We would immediately fall in love with him. That is what will happen. But what is taking so long? What is causing the delay in us loving him? The reason is that we have practiced accepting the world for too long. And that is why we are unable to break this habit or this practice. We have formed such a strong habit of accepting the world as ours. And it's not that we stubbornly insist on accepting the world, as Sri Maharaji tells us, as ours and ignoring our relationship with Sri Krishna. No, it is not like that. But because we have thought about it repeatedly, contemplated on the world as being a source of happiness for uncountable lifetimes, and that alone is the greatest misfortune. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ji calls it misfortune, durdaiva, meaning that is our predicament. Nam namakari bahudha nij sarva shaktis tatrarpita niyamitah smaranena kalah etadrishi tava kripa bhagavan mamapi durdaiva midrishamiha janina nuragah. Shri Maharaji tells us that we have, over the course of so many lifetimes, we have met saints and descensions of divine personalities. We have been in their association. We have received knowledge. We have read. We have nodded our heads, and we have accepted the knowledge and everything. In fact, we have even written commentaries on scriptures many, many times. We have been to Svarg Lok. We have been Indra. We became Indra so many times. But that one impediment, that deep-seated, that deep-rooted attachment to the world that we developed through consistent practice, that is the impediment. Sri Maharaji tells us about a Hindu who converted to Islam. And so the Maulvi told him that now you've accepted Islam religion, so now you have to chant and say Allah, Allah. No Ram Sham. He said, of course. Now that I have become a Muslim, of course. So the next morning when he woke up and he yawned and kind of stretched his arms, He said, "Hey Ram." So when the Maulvi heard him, he chided him. He said, "Did you forget I told you yesterday?" And he said, "Maulvi Sahib, Ram has been residing in my heart for the last 42 years. As for Allah, He just came in yesterday. He just came in yesterday." So the point is, it is so difficult to erase the attachment. But please don't be stuck on this, because we're very good at justifying ourselves. "Oh yeah, I am attached, so hence my carelessness and my negligence." No, that's not good. It may be difficult, but not impossible. We have Maharaji, don't forget. We have the greatest power on our side. Not impossible. So knowledge is most important. It's very important. And that is why Sri Maharaji repeatedly urges us to listen to knowledge. Siddhant boliya chitte na kar alas. That we should not be lazy when it comes to listening to and hearing divine knowledge. No, we shouldn't be. Sometimes when we listen, if we have heard a lecture a number of times, and if once again that lecture is played, whether it's in the morning satsang or even in the evening, whenever during satsang, and we think, "Oh, but I've already heard this lecture so many times, I know it." So this attitude, it is our ego that dictates this attitude of knowingness. The fact is that we don't actually know, because if we did know, our job would have been done. It would have been done. No, but it is not like that. Yesterday in my lecture, I explained that we have embarked on the journey to God, for sure. We are on our way. But until we reach the divine shores of Golok, we cannot abandon or renounce the safety of the boat. And what is that boat? The boat is divine knowledge. It's most important. We cannot harbor pride that we know enough, because at the end of the day, our mind, our intellect is material. And we have deeply embedded sanskars in our consciousness. Sri Maharaji talks about how many devotees, even after reaching such a height of devotion, bhav bhakti, they fall back into the world. The same devotees who were once chanting and fully absorbed in devotion, if anyone saw them, they would never think that they could turn back and fall into the world again. But that could happen. So Sri Maharaji says that we're not expert snake charmers yet. No. We have to know exactly those potions and how to pronounce and how to say those. Otherwise, we could potentially hurt ourselves or even kill ourselves, falling back into the world. So knowledge is most important. It is indispensable in our path, in our journey. And also, Sri Maharaji reminds us that we may have heard a lecture so many times, And it's not like we remember everything about it. Even though we may think so, it is not like that. And each time we hear, we derive deeper understanding from the same lecture, from the same exact lecture. Yes. I want to share one of my experiences. Once I approached a devotee many years ago, and an instruction came from Sri Maharaji about sending contribution through a different means, through a different channel. So when I told this devotee, he couldn't wrap his head around this agya or this instruction. So he was kind of hung up on this thing of why is it different? Because we always send it through these means, and why is it like this? And I was trying to explain to him that it is Maharaji's agya after all, so how does it matter? But he still couldn't accept it. So the next day, he came to me and he said, and he was fine. He finally got over it. And I said, so what happened? He said, I heard that lecture of Sri Maharaji, and in that Maharaji says कि महापुरुष के आचरण पे उनके कार्यों में बुद्धि नहीं लगानी चाहिए. So in other words, one should not apply their intellect in the actions of God and Guru. Of course, it wasn't the first time that he heard that, but that one time he heard it, maybe it was his 51st time hearing it, but it changed. It changed his attitude and his understanding. It deepened. It intensified. So Sri Maharaji tells us, once Sri Maharaji was at the house of a retired judge. Some of us may know the story. And so the judge was very devoted and dedicated to Sri Maharaji, but his brother, who was the collector, he was not. He was squarely against God and saints and babas and mahatmas. So when Sri Maharaji was at the house of that retired judge, it just so happened that this brother turned up. And as soon as, of course, he saw Maharaji, he was consumed with anger. He was very upset. Maharaji was talking to a bunch of devotees at that time. And so what he was doing, he was just like pacing up and down the veranda, of course, hearing Sri Maharaji, what Sri Maharaji was saying. And gradually, his anger, it dissipated. So it started to dissipate. And finally, just after everything was over, Maharaji stopped speaking. And when everyone came up to Sri Maharaji to pranam to him, so he also was coming up to Sri Maharaji. But before he could touch Sri Maharaji's feet, Maharaji touched his feet. And so Maharaji was watching him all along, of course, as he was speaking, and so Maharaji touched his feet, and so he was very, very surprised and humbled, of course, and he said to Sri Maharaji, but how can you do this? You're a renunciate. And Maharaji said, really? What have I renounced? The world? Really? Everybody has to renounce the world, right? If we don't renounce it willingly, then Yamaraj is going to do it for us. But we have to renounce the world no matter what. So what have I renounced? I haven't renounced anything. And if I have renounced the world, it's to go toward God. But think of yourself. What have you done? You have renounced God for the world. So these words of Sri Maharaji penetrated so deep in his heart that he fell on Sri Maharaji as if somebody pushed him. And from that day, it was a life-changing experience for him. And he became, as Sri Maharaji describes it, a better devotee than even his own brother, the retired judge who used to call him a demon. कि मेरा भाई राक्षस है. So he became even a better devotee. How? Knowledge. Just knowledge. Yes. So from a practical standpoint, Sri Maharaji has also said that devotees ask that, oh Sri Maharaji, that even though we have received knowledge from you, we understand it, we accept it, we embrace it, but what is it? Why is it that we cannot make headway? We're not making progress on the path of devotion. So, just as in these lines that I'm describing today or elaborating on, Rasikon dwara janane par bhi, that even having learned from your loving saints. So even though we have divine knowledge and yet we don't make progress, why is it? So Sri Maharaji said that the problem lies in how we seek God's divine love, or divine love from Sri Radha Krishna. The problem lies in how we ask for it, how we aspire for it. That is the problem. So Sri Maharaji tells us that our asking is lacking. Lacking what? Sincerity. Sincerity. We ask, but we ask superficially. Our asking is shallow. It doesn't have any depth. So Sri Maharaji says we have to have depth. Not just superficially we should ask. It has to have power. Power of our devotion should be there. Yes. And so why do we ask? Why? What is the reason for the insincerity? Why? Why is our devotion not deep? So Sri Maharaji tells us because we have become accustomed to the material world over the course of uncountable lifetimes, because we allowed worldly people to be in our heart, to inhabit our heart. And consequently, we accumulated an enormous amount of filth. Filth in the form of impurity in the form of our sanskars, our attachments, our ambitions, and all of this, and all those mayic defilements. And even in this lifetime, what have we done? All life long, what have we done? Well, we have adopted various means and ways of appearing impressive in front of people to influence them and to deceive them. This is what we have done. And so the person that is most capable of doing that is called advanced. He is so advanced. Really smart. Like Americans, it's so smart. Yeah. He's so smart that he can turn anyone in his favor. What we call etiquette and culture in this country is the art of speaking and acting shrewdly to make to get what they want, what people want, to get one's desires fulfilled, and to achieve one's ends in this world. We admire someone who so expertly wrangles another person by approaching them appropriately through behavior and expressions and gestures. And while we call all of this etiquette and culture, Sri Maharaji says that it is out and out superficiality. We have spent our entire life planning and our energy planning and plotting how to deceive people. We pick up this shrewdness through novels that we read, books, newspapers, and also the shrewd people that we associate with, whom we consider our role models. Wow, they're my role model. So, this accumulated knowledge, because of this accumulated knowledge, we become experts in duping husband, wife, parents, children, neighbors, and the rest of the world. And if you really think about it, what do we gain from this? What do we gain from this? More of the world for ourselves. But we deprive ourselves of true, real happiness. Yes, we deprive ourselves of happiness. This is so that lifelong effort that we invest in accumulating the world, what does it amount to? More worldliness? Yes. And how long is that going to last? And where is it going to take us? It's just going to take us down. It already is. So, but we never think about these things. We never do. So Sri Maharaji says that we have accumulated all of this filth and impurity in our heart. And so we have become so accustomed to the world that we do not want to part with the poison of the world. We don't even want to think about the nectar. No, we don't want to. Once, a disciple of Shukadeva Paramhans asked him, "Why is it that I cannot engage my mind in the loving thoughts of God? Even though I try day and night, this wretched mind wanders from one place to another. It just wanders. I pull it back, and as soon as I've done so, it runs off again." So Shukadeva Paramhans smiled but did not offer an answer. A few days later, he invited that disciple to join him on his morning walk through the forest. So it wasn't long before he paused and, pointing to some excreta on the ground that had all these worms crawling all over it, Shukadeva Paramhans told the disciple, "Do you see that?" So he said, "I want you to take one of those bugs, those worms, and put it on that fragrant flower." And he did. And no sooner had he done so that the worm slithered off the flower through the moist grass of the forest floor back onto the feces. So Shukadeva Paramhans said, "Did you understand? Do you know now you had that question why your mind cannot think about God?" So with his palms joined and a little red-faced, he requested an explanation. So Shukadeva Paramahansa said, just like this worm is accustomed to loving excrement, thinking there's nothing better, your mind is accustomed to loving the hollow, illusionary pleasures of this world because it believes that happiness still exists in this world. Yes. Just like a worm that breeds and lives in a drain, if it were placed in a bottle, in a perfume bottle, it will die. If a drunkard lying in a gutter, if somebody asks him, why aren't you home? This is my home. That's what he'll say. So in the same way, due to our continuous practice over the course of unlimited lifetimes, we have become habituated into believing and accepting that this world is a source of happiness and joy. This was the answer that Shukadeva Paramhans gave. So we don't want, owing to the deep sanskars that we have developed through our perpetual associations with the world. Yes. Once Prahlad, Bhakti Shiromani Prahlad, before he ascended to Golok, to divine Golok, he said to Sri Krishna that, Sri Krishna, I'm not going to go alone. You know, I'm going to bring people along with me. So Sri Krishna said, all right, I have no problem with that. After all, Golok mein kitne log hain? There's not that many people in Golok after all, so it's fine. So Prahlad went from one house to another, and the consistent answer he got was, oh no, you know, we're family people. We're family people, and we have all these responsibilities and obligations and commitments. Not for us. So he asked a boar, a pig. Prahlad asked a pig, and he said, well, you are in this miserable body. How about you come with me to Golok? So the pig asked, is my favorite food available there? You know, the pigs eat poop, feces. So Prahlad chuckled. Dhanyo, glories to you. So the point is, it is our attachment to the world. And so when we ask, we have to ask sincerely. That is what Sri Maharaji tells us. And so the degree of our sincerity will gradually grow and outweigh insincerity. That is what will happen. In other words, gradually our mind will detach from the world, and to that degree it will attach to Sri Radha Krishna. So in these lines, Sri Maharaji explains that because of my worldly associations, Murakh nipat gawar are man koti kalp bhatkyo jo shukar vishtha vishaya majar अरे मन बिनु सेवा जहाँ पाइय मेवा गयो न तेहि दरबार अरे मन. So Shri Maharaji tells us that we pursued the filthy material pleasures as a means of receiving happiness. And we never once looked or went to the abode of Radharani, where jahan paiye binu seva, jahan paiye meva, without any effort, we would receive everything. We would receive everything. And Sri Radharani is waiting for us with her arms open to embrace us. And we didn't heed. We didn't submit our heart and mind. So this is the explanation of these few lines. बोलिए श्रीमत सद्गुरु सरकार की, श्रीमत युगल सरकार की जय. जय श्री राधे, जय जय श्री राधे, जय जय श्री